Good morning. Good morning. It's another hump day. Hump day is never used to be my favorite day. Friday was always my favorite day, but hump days are growing on me. I get to spend them living in my purpose, and that's really cool. Got my mic right here. That's really cool, people. Live your purpose. Do it. So, hi, happy Hump Day, happy Wednesday. I'm Valerie Shepard coming to you from the Hartley Center for Mindfulness and Self-Mastery. Yabba dabba do. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for joining me. What is it that I want to talk about today? Self-mastery, which is such a broad container for this thing called happiness. It's really interesting that in the space of connecting to who and what you think you are, you really create the truest aspect of you. The truest aspect of you. I'm going to tilt my thing down a little bit because I hate having my head cut off. So, good morning. Self-mastery is this thing of mastering you in your life so that you can exquisitely manage whatever your life brings your way, no matter what those things are. And sometimes those things are really exceptionally wonderful. And sometimes those things are horribly, we could evaluate them on the surface as horribly bad. And either way, we want to be in a space of exquisitely dealing with them. Like, I got my little clap thing here so that we can go, yay, I did it, I'm doing it, I'm making it happen, I'm getting things aligned, I'm being the highest and best version of myself. It's like all of those things. We want to be in that highest and best version of ourselves so that no matter what happens, we are contributing the best decision making, the best discernment, the best acceptance, the best reaching out and asking for help. Those things come from the best places in us. They don't come from the lower consciousness, low vibration places in us. In the dedication in my book, I say that raising one's consciousness is the only way that I know, the only true way that I know to get true and lasting happiness. And that's what these Hump Day Happy Chats are about. They're not about momentary, changing, fleeting, conditional happiness. They're about how you can align with the depth of you that always is filled with the energies of love and joy and peace and compassion. Like that's what this is about. So today's topic, are your eyes deceiving you? Are your eyes deceiving you? Is a really important one in this quest for even determining how happy you are. Like, are your eyes deceiving you? So when I thought about this question, I thought about how there's such a difference between what we see at one level and what may be going on at a different level. So when we're looking at something, are we seeing the whole picture? Whether we're watching the news or we're talking to friends and something comes up, or we're even having a conversation with a loved one, or we're looking at some behaviors that we're seeing in ourselves. Like the question of are your eyes deceiving you is about whether the surface appearance in any situation is the totality of what's going on. There's a Latin proverb that still is used in the Americas and English-speaking countries today. It says, still waters run deep. Still waters run deep. And what it's basically saying is that a quiet or placid manner on the exterior may be concealing something very different on the interior. Something really placid and calm on the exterior may be concealing something very different on the deepest levels of the interior. And that's what this question, are your eyes deceiving you, is asking about. Good morning. Thanks for joining me. So last week, I talked about discernment and how discernment is much better, much more, serves you better than judgment. And so here's where it's really critical, right? Discernment helps you read situations and decide how best to engage, not how best to manage what they're doing, because you don't have control over that, but how best to determine what is my response. For you to be able to say, okay, I'm noticing this, I'm feeling this, I'm hearing this, this is what I'm going to do or not do. So ultimately, with discernment, you need some more information, maybe more information than what you believe you know, right? It might be you need to know more potentially. And a lot of people stop with what they know now in this moment. And then they find out later, oh, I didn't know that. You hear people say, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's like, right, you didn't. Discernment helps you get to that place where you know that you don't know everything in the situation or everything about the other. So information feeds it. Wider perspective. Like, am I seeing this with my eyes or am I seeing this with my eyes? What am I feeling? Where is that coming from? Is it coming from me? You know, people say they made me feel a certain way. Now, they triggered something inside you and it exploded. It's about your ability to accept varying interpretations. You know, I've really started saying in my conversations, you know, this is my experience. It's not necessarily true. That is the way that I let others know I'm not in a shame and blame game. I'm in an interpretation, in a discernment game. And I'm willing to see that my interpretation is not the penultimate. And it's not the ruling interpretation. It's mine. So the ability to accept varying interpretations, and then there's a really big, big, big one on the end. Compassion. Compassion for the self and everything else in the situation. So let's look at this really briefly, okay? So are your eyes deceiving you? Are you seeing only what's on the surface, or are you going below the surface? So I'll tell you, I've got a million of these stories where I was looking at things on the surface and not necessarily seeing them deep below. I'm really much better at this, but I'll tell you one from several years ago when I first moved here to California, and I was walking in my neighborhood in Irvine, and I love to speak to people just because I just like being connected. I've always felt that way. So I was very talkative in my second grade report card. Yes, it talked about me being really talkative. And so people think that makes me an extrovert. I even thought that too, but I'm finding as I mature in my relationship with myself that I'm actually pretty introverted. Anyway, I digress. So this morning I'm out doing my walk and I don't put headsets on. I just want to hear nature. And so I was just walking and there was a person coming at me. And as they approached, I said, good morning. And we passed each other and they didn't say a word. They didn't look up. They didn't acknowledge my presence at all. And so what did I do? I turned around and I said, good morning. I said, good morning. You know, I was like calling them on the carpet for not speaking to me. And in that moment, this person turned around, and what I could see that I couldn't see when I was first saying good morning was they were in a deep contemplative or reflective place. And they may not even have really viscerally understood that someone was near them and had said good morning. They were in some place that was about them. And maybe I had even disrupted it, right? And they turned around and you could even potentially have read that there was something upsetting that they were trying to manage and work through in that walk. So that walk for them was something different than my walk was for me. And so in that moment of like calling them into, you will have a connection with me. You will notice me. You will appreciate my presence. You will accept that I'm here and I want to speak with you, right? That which is all about me. It was all about me. In that moment, I had to notice. So all I saw was the surface. I didn't really notice the deeper thing going on with them. So is the reaction you see and feel on the surface of yourself or other people? I mean, we really have to do this with ourselves. Wow, I just barked at that person. What's that about? Wow, I feel myself being really resistant, or I feel myself being really hard to reach. Like I'm not there, not present. What's that about? Is the reaction that you see on the surface the really deepest truth of what's really going on with that person or in that situation where there isn't even another, right? You can ask yourself these kinds of questions. When I'm feeling anger, is that anger a cover for something? So for example, I know for myself in the self-mastery work that I've done, my anger has always been a cover for fear. I learned that very young. I really believe that that was the truth with my father, that anger was a cover for fear. It was a way that I could give myself an empowered sense of rising up to meet the challenge, because the other energy below that was less empowered. It was in a more helpless space, in a more not enough, unworthy space. So the fear was coming from someplace deeper. It's not the truth of who I am, nor was the anger. And people would label me as, well, she's so angry, I never know what I'm going to get. And that was true. That's what they were feeling. But it was a cover for something much deeper and much softer, much more humane. Is your smile a cover for feeling insignificant, a cover for deep sadness that you don't think is going to go away? So you put a pretty face on it. It's a way of pushing people away. It's a way of protecting them and you. We say to ourselves, they don't want to hear my problems. They don't want to know what's going on with me. They won't understand it. So maybe that smile, good morning, thank you for joining me. Maybe that smile that you're putting on it, right? The sugar coating is actually that you don't want people to know that there's something deeper going on and you're not even able to handle it. You're not even able necessarily to identify what it is, but it doesn't feel good to you. And you don't want that in the space. Maybe you're quiet. I was a person when I got upset, especially in relationship, when I got upset, I withdrew. I withdrew my energy and I would get quiet, the silent treatment. And people, my partners would know, oh, the silent treatment's happening, so something must be bothering her. So is your quiet a cover on something simmering close to boil on the inside that you don't know how to bring up, that you think they won't understand? For me, it was just not believing I was lovable. And so putting that into the space wasn't going to do me any good. So I just simmered over it, which didn't create anything good in the space either. When you're looking at situations when there's no person, when things aren't happening, people aren't returning your phone calls, they didn't answer the email, I didn't get a text, all those different things, when it looks like nothing's happening and you're wondering, why isn't anything happening? I'm trying. I put in a lot of effort. It's not giving me the results I want. Your eyes are seeing stagnation or disenfranchisement. Your heart is feeling abandonment, but maybe there's something deeper going on. There's a big difference between stagnation on the surface and gestation deep on the inside. But to the eyes, to the human eyes, especially when you're not in discernment, you're just in judgment, it all looks the same. It all looks the same. Have you ever tried to talk to someone about something that they're doing that maybe is bothersome to you, and they turn the tables? So you're trying to talk to them about one thing and they turn the tables and it all of a sudden is back in your face and it's all about you. I mean, have you ever done that? Yeah, I've been that person. I've felt it and I've delivered it. Neither one felt very good. What I do know about me on the inside is sometimes in those moments of being told how I'm inadequate for someone else or how I've hurt someone's feelings or how they don't understand something that I'm doing, it's hard for me at times to look at that thing in myself. And so for others, it can be the same way. So when it looks like they're being angry, right? It doesn't feel good. And what's going on feels like they're just throwing it back in your face. Have you ever considered perhaps it's very difficult for that person to like hear how they've let you down, to look at themselves as the person who hurt you, to feel that inadequacy on top of whatever they were feeling in the first place. And so in order to balance the scales and get back up to the feeling like you're equal, they've got to bring something up about you. It's not necessarily true, and it's not necessarily even the way they want to be. It never was for me. That's not who I wanted to be. It's that there was something deeper going on in my subconscious, in my wounded self, the false self, as I talk about in my workshops and with my clients and in my book. The false self was running me, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it. Does that mean I'm not culpable? No. I take full responsibility for who I've been, who I am, and who I'm becoming. That's self-mastery. That's the walk. So on the surface, you might see these behaviors and call them rude, insensitive, calculating, mean, selfish, until you're able to look below the surface of that judgment that you're getting from only your eyes and maybe your mind. And you might find fear and sadness and guilt and shame and maybe even some helplessness. There were times I felt helpless as a being. So this doesn't mean that you shouldn't have said anything in the first place. It's not about you being responsible for taking care of their feelings. It's not about you being responsible for the junk in their trunk. You cannot clean up the junk in someone else's emotional trunk. That's theirs to do. But you are responsible for what energy you bring in the situation. I am responsible for who I am in every moment. Hi, thank you for joining. So in those moments where you're on the surface judging, you have a really good opportunity to ask yourself, what might be going on at a deeper level? What are my eyes not seeing? What if I opened my heart, felt the energy, listened in a way where my human ears aren't necessary? What might I discern about the situation that I'm currently in? Whether there are other people involved or whether it's just you and the universe in a dance of evolution and development and becoming. So you start this dance looking below the surface of you. What's going on in here? This instrument, this magnificent, energetic instrument that you are, is constantly receiving and giving and receiving and giving and pinging energy in a vibrational dance with everything else in the universe. Everything is energy. So look below the surface. Is what I'm feeling what's really going on, or is that part of me that needs to be healed? Then slow your roll. There's another happy chat on that. Slow your roll, which means be slow to jump to judgments based on the surface appearances. Be slow to call someone mean and jump into reaction. Be slow to call them wrong. Be slow to call them unjust. Be slow to that judgment because of surface appearances. Get quiet on the inside, like that old thing about counting to 10, getting connected to your breath, Regrounding yourself really is important to getting control of yourself, not to control them, to get control of yourself and to know whether I'm in judgment or discernment. And am I on the surface or am I allowing myself to see, feel, hear, know, discern at a deeper level? So let your knee come out of its jerk. Let go of that knee-jerk reaction and go to a place where you can be in response, deeper place. Response comes from discernment. Response comes from seeing below the surface of the situation. And then last and most importantly, open your heart. Open your heart to yourself. I'm feeling a lot of anger right now. I know my anger is often a cover for my fear, so I'm going to allow myself to feel the fear. I'm afraid that because you're seeing that I did something wrong, that you're going to leave me, and that terrifies me. I'm afraid because I made a mistake that I'm jeopardizing my livelihood, and that scares me. I'm afraid that I don't know what to do in this situation, and the situation is going to knock me down and drag me around, and I will not recover. And these don't have to be out loud conversations, but they need to be a conversation, even with the self. Some of your most powerful moments are when you get quiet and be with you in truth, in faith, in love, in harmony and tolerance of all that you are, knowing that your surface self, the human self of you, is just a piece. It's not the totality. Just like anything you see on the surface is never the totality, whether it's in the news or whether it's what you're reading inside you. So that's our chat for today. Doing this will allow you to access more happiness in every moment. Doing this, like getting below the surface, even in the midst of what feels like nothing's happening, will help you say, wait a minute, there is something happening. I got this, and I only sent that email yesterday, so it's only been 9 hours, right? I sent it at 10 p.m. It's only 8 a.m. So like really getting below the surface will help you actually discern what's going on and shift you back into that place of happiness, peacefulness, harmony, compassion, patience, self-love, which is the root of all unconditional love, has to start here. So that's it. Are your eyes deceiving you, or are you going deep enough to get to the true deepest intent in any meaning, in any meaningful relationship, in any situation? This has been Valerie Shepard from the Hartley Center for Mindfulness and Self-Mastery. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the Hump Day Happy Chat. Hope you're happier. Much love and light. See you next time. Bye now. And this is where I get to hit all the buttons. Hit the button. Turning this off. Many blessings, love and light. Mwah.